You're in the waterloop.
Waterloop.
Welcome to Waterloop. This is Travis. Very excited to be joined by Swentek. He's the executive director of A Walk on Water. How are you doing?
I'm doing great, Travis. Thanks so much for having me on.
Yeah, so as a surfer myself, I'm really excited to have this conversation with you because I feel a lot of the benefits of surfing to me as an individual and in many ways. So I really want to talk to you about surf therapy. Some people might have heard of this, some people might have not. But what in a nutshell does that mean, surf therapy?
I think a lot of us who surf have been describing surfing as therapy for ourselves for as long as people have been surfing, right? All this benefit massively from getting in the water whenever we can. And I think that was really the impetus, at least for us, to start A Walk on Water back in 2012, is we wanted to share that stoke that we feel when we're in the ocean with those people who need it most. And so for us, that means serving kids with special needs by, what we provide is guided surf instruction with a professionally trained instructor, tandem surfing on one board mostly. We have some kids that are kind of graduating through the ranks that are catching waves on their own now, which is really exciting. But yeah, surf therapy is pretty broad. It's really the idea that getting in the ocean, getting on a board, catching some waves is legitimately medicinal / therapeutic, and just helps you, heals you, makes you feel better about life.
Yeah, no doubt. We can talk about our own little stories there in a minute. But so you had the idea to kind of start A Walk on Water back in 2012.
I would say the idea was even older than that. And the original founder, the one who came with this, was a guy named Pat. He brought me and some other guys into the organization, to create the organization back in 2012. Pat since moved on to something else, and so I'm left running the show here. But we still have a number of the original guys and gals involved, and we've continued to grow. We have almost 1,000 active volunteers now. We served over 1,500 kids in need last year, and over 1,000, and we're looking to serve over 1,500 this year. And it's been a crazy 7 years of growth and development, and good times and tough times, and just blessed to be involved in this space, and just thankful for where we are today.
And physically, where are you?
Physically right now in my living room, and you'll probably hear the construction guy in the background. We're redoing our bathroom right now, but I'm in the city of Redlands at the base of San Bernardino Mountains, a Big Bear. We moved out here a few years ago for my wife. She's a doctor, and so she was going to residency out here. And so I'm fairly removed from the beach now, which is tough. I should tell you, I just got out of a nice ice cold shower before this call. That's the closest I get to being in the ocean sometimes. But I learned that a couple of years ago as a great method to simulate the feeling of jumping in the ocean. So I'm a pretty big cold shower proponent.
Wow.
Gets you fired up, gets all your neurons kicked into gear, and it's really refreshing. I wish I was getting in the ocean a little bit more, but being a couple hours away from the beach and being as busy as I am running the organization and having a 10-month-old running around and my wife working, and all those things, adult life, if you will.
Yeah.
It's cutting in.
Yeah, well, you got a 10-month-old, you're got your hands full no matter what else is going on in the world around you. I know that firsthand. I've been there a couple times. But these kids that you've worked with, the 1,000 kids plus last year, this is kind of all along the Southern California beaches, greater LA area.
Initially, yes, we have grown pretty substantially. 4 years ago, we took a shot and went out to the East Coast and started having an event based out of Montauk at Ditch Plains Beach. And we have a huge community support out there through one of our former board members, Laura. She introduced us to a bunch of people out there, and that city just absolutely welcomed us with open arms. So we've been going back there every year for a big 2-day event with a fundraiser, just an amazing kind of 4 days that you spend in Montauk. And I don't know if you've ever been there, but one of my favorite places on earth. We've since grown to New Jersey as well as Virginia Beach for the first time last year. We'll be back to both those places again this year, and we're looking to continue to grow along the eastern seaboard in a really controlled way. And then 2 years ago, we started branching out into Northern California, where I'm from. I was born and raised in Santa Cruz. So we had a Santa Cruz event started 2 years ago in Cowles, and we'll be back there again in May. So super excited about that. We are actually adding a second Northern California event that will be announced really soon. So we still have about 7 or 8 events in the Southern California area, and then the rest in those areas that I just mentioned. A couple new areas we're also later this year that we're super excited about.
Awesome. So, so you're mostly focused on children, kids, right? And what type of disabilities are we talking about? What are these kids that are coming to get this experience? What are they dealing with?
I mean, anything and everything. A walk on water is for children with special needs or disability, and their siblings. That's a really important thing that we should talk about later. But we've taken plenty of adults, I should say. At the Montauk event, every year we actually have a busload of adults from a local community center for adults with special needs that join us. And I'm talking 70-year-olds surfing, going in the ocean for the first time in their life for some of them. And talk about tear-jerking, epic stuff. But for the most part, we focus on children with special needs or disability, or children really with anything life-altering. They could be fighting cancer, they could be dealing with homelessness, anything socioeconomic, anything of that nature. It's mental health, it's physical health, it's all sorts of things. So we have a number of children with autism. We have a number of kids with Down syndrome, cerebral palsy, kids with epilepsy, various seizure disorders. I mean, I've learned about thousands of new disabilities and special needs since I've been involved with this, just because we have families that run the gamut. And the big thing for us, and I mentioned, is that we also include the siblings. And to be honest, we've even taken the parents out a few times if they're interested, because we really want to make it a familial bonding experience where the child with special needs and their sibling get to do something together. Because a lot of times they live sort of disparate lives. One in this program, one's traditional program. So we give them a chance to bond over something together. I mean, when 2 kids are surfing literally next to each other on the same wave, get to come in, hug each other, and share that stoke. It's pretty epic. So we've always said anyone and everyone who can benefit from surf therapy is always welcome to join us. It's completely non-discriminatory.
I want to try to dive into some of those situations and conditions a little bit, and kind of what you think or what you hear that the kids and people get from that. You have kind of people dealing with the real physical challenges, like you mentioned. So what is the surfing experience like for these kids that have had physical limitations and just can't be as active or do as challenging stuff, and for them to get to go surf?
Yeah, I think it's incredibly empowering. Every child that participates with us is awarded a trophy at the end of the day. We actually create a huge circle with everyone in attendance. We call the child up by name, and everyone cheers for them. A lot of these kids have never gotten a trophy or an award for anything. A lot of them don't participate in sports, like you said. And the trophy just says one thing. It says athlete, because out there, nobody has a label. Everyone is the same once they enter the water. They're a surfer and an athlete. So we really want to honor that. I believe, and I think a lot of people in our organization believe, that youth and sport are, the combination is so vital to the development, the health, the growth of a child. So as a kid who grew up, playing every sport in the world, I really think it's important that we get these kids involved in as many things as we can. And surfing is one of those things that has a really steep learning curve and has a lot of barriers to entry. And so for us to be able to knock all those down and allow a kid to literally catch a wave, oftentimes an overhead curling breaking wave, like the first time they've ever gone to the beach in their life, that's kind of amazing. And I think that's why we're able to see such amazing results, is that we're taking a normal timeline and rapidly accelerating it. So a kid who can show up at the beach and say, this is my first time I've ever been to the beach, let alone in the ocean, let alone surf. We hand them to a professionally trained instructor who paddles them out, gets up on the board, stands the kid up in the barrel, and the two of them surf the wave together. I don't think there's anything else like that in the world, frankly.
Yeah, amazing.
And and you mentioned, the physical disability, and some of these kids are extremely disabled. We have kids who can't walk, can't hold themselves up. And so these surfers, some of them are just incredible with what they do, because they're balancing their own weight plus another person's weight who may not be able to control their own body weight and balance in the correct way. And we have instructors who pick the kid up in their arms and are holding the kid in their arms. And some of these kids are not just kids; they're healthy, big, young adults. And so it's incredible to witness. We've got just the best watermen in the world and waterwomen participating with us. And we're so grateful for that.
That's amazing. I think some of the surf therapy stuff that happens, not trying to slight it in any way. They focus on a particular disability or particular, condition that children have. I know there's some that focus a lot on autistic children. That's all awesome and great. Mm-hmm. But you're seeing the benefits for all these different conditions, huh? For whatever kids are doing.
Yeah, absolutely. And yeah, I mean, sir, the majority of us in A Walk on Water cut our teeth on Surfers Healing, which is an autism-specific therapy nonprofit, which is amazing, and have been doing amazing work for so long. I started with them way back in like 2001. And so I was super grateful for the time I spent with them, and that's how I met Pat, and that's how I met a lot of the guys that are here in A Walk on Water. But yeah, it also showed us, at the time, we're like, well, if this is so powerful for these kids, it's science has shown extra beneficial for kids on the autism spectrum. And so we definitely still see a number of athletes on the autism spectrum, but we also see a lot of them with comorbidities where they have, additional diagnosis to their autism. And we've seen positive results across the board. It doesn't even matter what the disability is. We have an athlete with CP who is getting better at walking every day, and he starts with us all the time. And when he started with us, he couldn't even get up off the, laying on the ground. And we have, kids who were on nonverbal autistic to like 4 or 5 years old, never said a word in their life. And they begin to sentences. And now you have Jacob, who's 11 years old now, and he'll come up right up to you and shake your hand and carry on with you and have a conversation. And you're like, how is this possible? I remember when this kid couldn't even speak. So things like that are pretty incredible. And we hear anecdotal evidence all the time that parents, constantly write us emails and reach out to us after events and say, my child just had the best week they've ever had in school. Their performance is this and that. They're interacting with their peers. They're behaving better. They're sleeping better. They're saying words they never said before. I've heard from a parent that said, my child said, "I love you, Mom," for the first time in their life. And
oh my God.
The kind of stuff that melts you, and I'm getting like goosebumps right now talking about it. And I've cried a million times over this stuff because what these parents go through, and especially now that I'm a parent, with my little girl, all this stuff hits me a lot more. But imagine what parents go through who are 24/7, 365 dealing with a child with severe special needs, and what that looks like for them is unreal. And so that's why AWOW has such a focus on the entire family unit. And if you come out to an AWOW event, you'd see like we create an entire village. It's meant to be a full day at the beach of, a day of restoration, respite for the entire family. Not just the surfing for the kids, but the parents get treated to healthy breakfast, lunch, snacks, drinks. There's a masseuse for the parents. We have a music station, art station, yoga, all these different activities so that it's really this day at the beach to forget about all the troubles and all the difficulties in life and just dig into everything that the beach has to offer.
I like what you said about how you guys try to get the siblings out there, parents have gotten out there, and it's probably just a really exhilarating experience for them too, right? And it's a bonding experience and just a real relief probably to what they go through on a regular basis.
No, absolutely. I would say one of the most common comments we get from families who participate with us and with other surf therapy organizations is that they love the fact that we include the siblings and include the rest of the family, and it allows them to really have these shared memories that they don't often get. That are positive. It's rare that they all get to go somewhere, not be judged, spend time together, do something that's physically and mentally beneficial for all of them, and then leave, with smiles on their faces and feeling like they had an amazing day.
And the the volunteers, the guys and girls that are out there in the water with them and helping around the whole event. I mean, it must be impactful really for them as well, right?
Yeah, it's something we've been talking a lot more about in the last couple of years is that the beneficiaries are numerous to what we're doing. It's not just the families. It's certainly not just the athletes. I hear stories from volunteers all the time who say, their life has been changed. They were going down a bad path, or they had all these negative things happening in their life. And then for some reason, when they started putting good out in the world by volunteering with the Walk on Water or any other nonprofit, just doing good things, amazing how good things start coming back into your life. And, as someone who believes in karmic retribution, I'm doing my best to, put out all the good I can in the world. And I feel really blessed to find myself now where I am with a beautiful family and our first home and a baby and all those things going on. And I definitely, I met my wife like 6 months after we started Walk on Water. So I kind of feel like all those things, come together in that way. And there's a number of volunteers that can share compelling stories about how their lives were changed through their volunteerism. So absolutely, the beneficiaries are numerous. The businesses and partners, the vendors that support us, talk about not just the financial impact on their business, the positive thing there, but they love sending their employees, and the people involved in their company love hearing about what's going on, seeing the videos, and it's so impactful, and it changes the culture in the workplace, and people get excited to know that their company cares and they give back in that way. So the beneficiaries are countless, absolutely. And really good call by you.
How did you get into this stuff in the first place? I even before you started, did the Walk on Water, and you're doing some other stuff. How'd you do it? How'd you get into it?
Well, I'm really grateful to my buddy Ray. It's been 20 years now, which blows my mind. I'm about to turn 40, but back in '99, I was working at a restaurant in Orange County, and my boss was someone who had volunteered with Special Olympics for a number of years. He said, "Hey, why don't you come up with us to Big Bear? We do the annual Southern California Special Olympics Winter Games. Amazing. It's 3 days. You get to stay in a cabin." And honestly, he kind of sold me on the aspect that all the volunteers kind of hang out and party together after. I was like, all right, sounds fun. And I got up there and it just blew me away. The Special Olympics, and I still work with them to this day, are just an unbelievable organization. And the personalities that I met, not just the volunteers, but the athletes, I hadn't spent a lot of time around kids or adults with special needs. And I was immediately taken by how at Special Olympics, these kids are celebrated and they feel empowered and they feel good about life, even through all the things they're battling. And I loved that. As someone who, I don't want to call it tough childhood, but challenges, and we grew up kind of poor, and I went through some weird stuff with myself growing up. I've always felt the need to kind of work on the behalf of, people maybe have less or different, And so it immediately just, I took to it like crazy. So I went back every year for the Winter Games with Ray and the team. And a couple years later, they wanted to launch snowboarding as a programming. They had never done that. They looked to me because I was the only snowboarder volunteer there. So I helped develop the program and all the racetracks and all that kind of stuff, and ran that for a few years and put the Winter Games before they had to fold, I think, in '07. Just due to cost concerns, it was so expensive to get up there and transport everyone. But I still volunteer for summer games. I'm a golfer. I play volleyball, soccer, so I'll go out and volunteer for those things. But through that, that exposure, it opened my eyes. And so, like I said, in '01, my buddy introduced me to Surfers Healing, and I immediately took to that. And that blew my mind all over again, because I'd seen what Special Olympics did and how thrilled the athletes were. But I saw the athletes year after year, because a lot of the same ones would come, and they were pretty much the same. Which was fine, but they really enjoyed their time there. But what I saw at Surfers Healing was truly transformational and unreal, like anything I'd ever seen. And keep in mind, to this point, I was not a surfer. I'd never surfed until I was 21 years old when I was introduced to Surfers Healing. I grew up at the beach, but I was like a semi-pro beach volleyball player. I was always on the courts. I was never really in the water. And so it blew my mind. I was like, because I would see kids go into the water, kicking, screaming, furious, and come out smiling and laughing and talking, and the parents just bawling, saying my kid is never this calm or this happy or this anything. I was like, there's something magical here. And so I just continued to volunteer with that, and was able to meet Pat and Lippy and all the other guys that we ended up forming a Walk on Water with. And it's become, I was always doing it on the side. I was always I was in the restaurant industry for many years, and I went back and finished my degree finally, and then I was in the corporate side of marketing for big corporations for a number of years, and I was always volunteering on the side, and I was just never as happy as I was when I was volunteering. So I'm so grateful that 2 years ago I was able to step away from just volunteering. I moved off the board of AWOW, and we hired our first employee, which was me, and that was in December of 2017. So it's been a crazy ride, and I'm so grateful. And I'm blessed that I have a wife who works really hard and makes good money that allows me to, make nonprofit money instead of the money I was making in the corporate world, and we're fine. But it allows me to do what I love, and I get to work from home, and I get to be around my child. And It's all blessings. And so like I said, I find myself here 20 years down the road of this nonprofit children with special needs space. And I couldn't imagine myself anywhere else. And I just feel so blessed.
That's great stuff. Great stuff. I wanted to also follow up on surf therapy as a way not just to help people that have different, physical or mental, challenges, but also the idea that it can be helpful for kids that have come from tough homes or tough socioeconomic situations, right? Or the whole other thing I've seen is, veterans, guys, coming back from overseas who've had rough experiences, and just the being in the ocean and being in the water and experiencing surfing and the healing that can bring. That's something.
It's a great question, Travis. There's so many demographics and audiences and people who are benefiting from surf therapy around the globe. And it's funny that you asked this, because I just spoke yesterday at the Rising Tide Summit up in San Pedro, and I was on a panel with my good friend Chris Permasio. She's the CEO of International Surf Therapy Organization, which I sit on the board of, which we formed in South Africa 2 years ago through Waves for Change, which is a huge surf therapy nonprofit out of South Africa and now all over Africa, frankly, and moving into other countries, who work specifically with impoverished youth in that area, and of which there is a major epidemic. For anyone who knows South Africa, there's still so many issues going on there. And I was so grateful to be able to volunteer there while we were there with their program and see these kids who, it's unbelievable what they go through. I wish I had these stats better memorized, but it's something like by age 13, like 75% of them have seen someone murdered or raped or something along those lines. And so these kids are growing up in this place where all they know is sort of hell. And so Tim Conaber, who created Waves for Change, just has absolutely changed the world down there. They started they call them townships. They started with this one township that was one of the worst in the entire area, like something like, stats like that. And like half the population was murdered, within 20 years. I don't know, just crazy stuff that is so scary. And within like 5-6 years after he had started the surf therapy program there, they had gone from being the most dangerous, the safest out of all of them, with the least amount of violent crime and sexual assault and things of that nature. And I got to credit it to the surf therapy. And when you see these kids and how much it changes their outlook on life, it's incredible. And they do an amazing thing where their instructors are graduates of the program. So they've created like this cyclical nature to where they're creating something that can have a lasting impact, and people have trust because they know that person from their community and they feel like they're in a safe space. So amazing stuff he's doing there. And so, and we've done a little bit with, homeless populations and people, with things like that here, but nowhere near what they're doing there. So it absolutely can change, have massive, effects on people dealing with anything, but especially with poverty. And then also, Chris used to run programs for an organization called Jimmy Miller Memorial Foundation, named for my buddy Jimmy, who passed away. He was a famous surfer out of Southern California. And they work specifically with wounded veterans. They also work with children in need more recently, but their sweet spot is the wounded vets. And so one of the other guys on the panel, Stephen Mount, was a guy who was wounded in battle in Iraq, and he now runs the Wounded Warrior Battalion out of Camp Pendleton, and they actually are now like prescribing surf therapy for these wounded vets because they have seen that it absolutely changes the trajectory of their lives, reduces the suicide rate massively, and actually rehabilitates these guys and gals into productive citizens again. And so it's just unbelievable what they're doing down there. The U.S. government actually granted $1 million to a program based out of Camp Pendleton that is studying the effects of surf therapy on their wounded vets. And because of the positive results they're seeing so far, that could very well be the straw that breaks the camel's back and gets us over the hump to where in the United States, the goal is ultimately that surf therapy is a prescribable, form of therapy, ideally something that is not, that runs counter to the, very pharmaceutical heavy way of treating that we have here in the United States, and that insurance can cover it, and that, people will have access to it that wouldn't have normally had access. Yeah, a lot of exciting things going on. And forming ESTO and what I've seen Chris do with the goal of ESTO is to really bridge the gap between there's hundreds of surf therapy organizations across the world now, and so we're trying to be the tip of the spear and drive change in each and every nation and soften up the ground, if you will, so that the surf therapy orgs that are there have a better chance to have a greater impact on the community.
So that that International Surf Therapy Organization is a bit of like an umbrella advocate for all the different entities like Surfers Healing and you guys and whoever's kind of involved. You're like, hey, this is good stuff. We're here to support it all, kind of thing.
Exactly. Yeah, I think we're up to we formed it with 8 organizations, and I think we're up to almost 40 that are member orgs now. And the idea is that everyone shares best practices. We conduct research together. We have a number of researchers and OTs and master's students and scientists who are doing surf therapy related research. We actually have a guy who's in ESTO, Jamie Marshall, who's actually legitimately getting his PhD in surf therapy, the first one ever through Edinburgh University. And so just incredible stuff happening through that. And I'm blessed that Walk on Water is a founding member of that. And that, it really helps us improve our offerings, because I get to see what these other leading organizations around the world do. And I go, wow, that's something that we could learn from. Even though we already offer a great product and we do things really well, there's always ways that we can improve what we do, make it better for the people we serve, improve the research we do and the data we're collecting, and help change the perception of surf therapy is just something that a bunch of surfers are doing at the beach. They're like, this is legitimate therapy for people who need it most. Yeah.
Well, a personal story I wanted to share. So, I have some challenges with anxiety sometimes. I got some issues there, and was really feeling it bad the past few days, just high level of anxiety. And just this morning, I finally got to get in the water for the first time in several weeks. There were actually waves, and my schedule worked out. Yeah. Got to surf for like an hour, and it's just like so much relief, man.
Right.
It doesn't solve it, right? But it's like, it is truly a medicine, and it makes, for me in that particular situation, it makes things a lot better. Legitimately
quiets your mind, right? And just it allows you to refocus on what's important.
Yeah. So many of the elements, like the physical exertion, getting that exercise, the being around the water, and just everything that the water itself brings, and what it takes mentally to surf, and all that kind of just has all the different therapeutic elements. I'm not telling you something you don't already know, but that's
hey, Charles, this is really important stuff, and you're hitting the nail on the head on all those things. It was funny at the summit yesterday at Rising Tide. Someone in the audience asked, like, what is it that actually causes this to be therapeutic, and what's the science, and how do we figure that out? And we said, boy, we wish we had the answer to that, but we're working on it, and a number of people around the world are working on it. There was just a study, I believe, in Australia where they actually had people surfing with these EEG caps on, where they're monitoring their brain waves as they're surfing. And we're going to figure it out eventually, I know, and that's going to break everything wide open. But, like you said, sport is good. Anything that tires you out, gets your body pumping is a great thing. And then something about being, I always say this, like, and I mentioned the shower earlier, anytime you get in any body of water, you feel better, right? You feel better after a shower. You feel better after you go swimming in a pool, or everything feels better, but there's something extra powerful about the ocean, whether it be the swell, the current, the wave crashing, the ions breaking, who knows, salt water. But boy, it's powerful. We did happen to go, we did an event at Enlund Wave Park last year, in Austin. And that was exceptional. We were kind of worried because it was our first event we'd ever done, not in a natural ocean, but in a man-made wave. And those kids came out of there smiling just as big, and the parents were crying just as hard. And it was still epic. It was different, but I'm on Team Wave Park just because, number one, it provides access to people who wouldn't normally have it. Because one of the things we always talk about at Walk on Water is it's disproportionately unfair that people who live close to the coast have access to this treatment, and people who live in Kansas don't. And so to that end, we actually kicked off a program this year, sort of breaking the lock, if you will, of people who are landlocked. And so we're actually, we raised funds to fly entire family units that are in a landlocked state out to our events. We're going to do a one family per event this year. And we're really excited about how that opens up the possibilities for families who might not normally have had the opportunity to experience surf therapy.
That's awesome. That's good stuff. I guess lastly, how can people who may be interested in participating in surf therapy or getting their kids into surf therapy, or some other relative or friend, or somebody that wants to get involved in volunteering or helping, what are good ways for people to find out and just kind of get connected?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, as it pertains to Walk on Water, anyone, like I said, anyone based anywhere pretty much in California or in the Northeast Corridor is welcome to join us. Or if you're anywhere and comply, I guess, yeah, you're welcome. It's walkonwater.org. You can also use our acronym, AWOW. We say AWOW. So AWOW.org will get you to the same place. From there, you can see volunteer or athlete signups for all our events. There's a way to donate. There's a way to learn about partnering if you own a business and are interested in getting exposure that way. I don't know what your reach is like with your podcast, Travis, but if you're international, I would definitely recommend ISTO, so International Surf Therapy Org. Their website is INTL for international surftherapy.org, intlsurftherapy.org. And there you can see a list of programs around the world that are partners, and learn about the ones that are in your area, and maybe go volunteer in your local community, country, continent. I think we represent 5 continents and 36 countries now, something like that. It's unbelievable, the growth of this sector.
I love it. It's such good stuff, man. I'm glad we got to connect. I really appreciate what you're doing. As someone, like I said, that believes in the benefits of surfing, and it's just good to see it used in such a great way for people that need it. So I appreciate that you're doing all this stuff. I hope to cross paths in person one day soon, and maybe one of your events or something.
Yeah, where are you based again? Remind me.
Yeah, so I'm in Wilmington, North Carolina, Wrightsville Beach, so almost South Carolina border, below the Outer Banks.
Yep. We'll be in Virginia Beach at the end of September if you feel like making a little road trip up to join us.
Okay.
I'd love to see you there. And then we do have eyes on North Carolina at some point, so hopefully that happens. But if you make a trip out to California, let me know. You can always be my guest at an event.
Sounds good. Yeah, keep me posted on North Carolina activities and stuff. I'd be happy to kind of get involved and help. So. Yeah.
I don't know if you know our buddy Jeff Carver, who's out there in North Carolina doing some great things. But you should connect with him. He does some surf therapy stuff out there in the Outer Banks. That's cool. So.
Good deal. All right. Hey, Sean, thank you so much. Take care.
Yeah, Travis, appreciate the opportunity, man. Thanks for having me, and glad we could finally connect. I know it was a couple times that it didn't work out, so my bad.
No, it's how it goes. Everybody's busy. All right, thanks.
All right, buddy. Have a great day.
You're in the water loop.